Hey there, I'm excited to be here and share with you that I am going to be 55 years old this Friday. And I'm not here to get happy birthdays, though. If you want to say happy birthday in the comments below, I won't stop you or complain. But it's really because I've had some really big topics that have been pressing on my consciousness for months now. And guidance is that this is the perfect doorway to do it. Now, first of all, turning 55, I'm starting 5 days of discussion on this on the 5th for 5 days of discussion. Now, granted, it's only 4 days to my birthday, but if you count today, it's 5. So all kinds of 5s, all kinds of magical, because say like in numerology, 55 has to do with change and progress and freedom. 5 has to do with unpredictability and always in motion and looking for change. And even if you look at 5 plus 5 equals 10, from that formula, it's all about wholeness and completion. So what is there not to look forward to? What a great number for a year in age. And in talking about that, I'm going to shift gears and go right into discussion with my compatriots, my Facebook friends and family, all who are in their 40s, 50s, and early 60s, because I am including early 60s because I do believe you are in the same generation, even if many don't. We had the same childhood. But yes, Gen X in general. Gen X, who are typically invisible. We have mastered the art of invisibility. We have mastered being completely ignored. I can't tell you how many articles I've read, especially in the past year, that talk about boomers and millennials. And I sit there and say, so what about Gen X? No comments about that. Or they'll talk about boomers with millennial kids. And I say, well, actually, many boomers had Gen X kids, and Gen X had millennial kids and Gen Z kids, but who's counting, right? That's not the point. Point is, it's time for us to stop being invisible. It's time for us to stand up and take a lead. And to do that, we have to change our perspective and stop calling ourselves old in our 40s, 50s, and 60s. I hear so many people I know, so many, who sit there and say things about, oh, these old bones, and oh, I'm so decrepit, or I'm too old for that. And I scratch my head because, hello, we are probably the first generation who are truly in midlife in our 50s, because there's a good chance that we're going to live to be 100. So why would we be old and decrepit when we're only like halfway there? We're also one of the most resilient generations ever, especially who are living today, because we were born into a completely different world. We grew up during evolutionary change, huge change, technological change, societal change, economic change that is just, I'm going to use a word I just don't like to use, but it was unprecedented because it truly was. Now, granted, the older generation did also, they have, and they were even before us, but in many cases, we're the first ones to use the new technologies. We're the ones, in many cases, we're the ones that developed them, not only use them, embrace them, and led in them, and have been part of the technological evolution, revolution, whatever you want to call it. Now, granted, generation after us, yeah, absolutely. They take a baton and run with it in a different way. But we are masters of resiliency and fluidity in change. We know how to straddle two different worlds, and all kinds of two different worlds. Many of us in mid-adulthood, in midlife, whatever you want to call it, have had massive spiritual awakenings and do this work now. And why is that? Because we know how to straddle the practical, the science, and the metaphysical. It's just another straddling. We're used to it. So, in that importance, for the next 5 days, 4 days after this, I am talking about how to change our perspective, things to think about, things to be just aware of that we're talking to ourselves about, and talking about how I see things from a different perspective in terms of we're just coming into the limelight of our lives. Yeah, many of us who had kids, the kids are grown. right? And I say, stop emulating the older generation. Now it's time for us to really come into our own, because we were like, okay, this is what we were taught that we wanted, but then we still push change. We have pushed so much change in this world. We've been at the forefront of so much of it. Not only technologically, I mean, we grew up with 8-track tapes and LPs, then to cassette tapes, to CDs, right? To dial-up modems, to streaming Napster, right? To so many other things. And that's just very, very beginning. We grew up through and pushed us through a whole bunch of societal change. Many of us don't have the standard life, right? So many have gotten married and divorced, sometimes multiple times. Some have not gotten married at all. The nature of marriage has changed. The nature of relationships have changed. The nature of our sexuality, of our gender identity, all that stuff were things we pushed and pushed against old traditions. And we know to see the old traditions for what they were and appreciate them in many cases, and also let go of them to embrace something new. So we know both ends of the spectrum. And having a spiritual awakening was no different. We know it was like in the old rituals, the old traditions, the old beliefs, and we see quantum physics. We understand how things fit together scientifically as well as non-physically, which really is what quantum physics has spanned. And there's so much in doing that, where we change our aging process, that we look at aging as a belief. There's so many things that we can talk about. But I am going to spend the next 5 days coming up here and talking about different perspectives to take, different ways to look at things. And hopefully then you can walk away with me on my birthday to say, okay, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's lead the world. Let's lead the change. Let's lead the evolution. Let's let the older ones, retire and help the other ones who are really, taking it and running with it as well, to embrace that whole integration, because there's going to be so many integrations that are going on. It's time for us to take being the first latchkey kids to a new degree of power and empowerment. We know how to be independent. We know how to think on our own. We know how to see things differently and figure out our own stuff. Now, we hated it when we were kids, but now we love it. And now it's time for us to come together and see how we can change so much and change the story. It's time for us to change the story. So stick with me. I hope to see you over the next several days, the next week, and then we can celebrate on Friday.